Oh, hello there. Welcome back to the Agostinho Zinga show with me, your host, Agostinho Zinga, and this is episode number 399. 399. I'm pretty sure that's the number, but in case it isn't, just pretend it is. Welcome back. I'm your host, Agostinho Zinga. How you doing? How you feeling? Great, amazing. How am I? Pretty good, chilling. Got a little bit of a drink in my cup, hanging out, chilling in the new surroundings. So don't adjust your dial, temporary surroundings for the time being, just because I want to see your beautiful, lovely faces in full HD, and I hope you can hear my voice in full HD too. If it's your first time tuning in to the show via YouTube, make sure my God, I'm saying all my words. Make sure you slap that like button, hit subscribe, and leave me a comment down below. If it's your first time listening via the podcast app, please leave me a 5-star review, download the show, and share it with your friends. Attach it in an email, send it to everybody you know on your contact list, put it in the back of a postcard, and send it to a lover that you've forgotten about. Of course, support via Patreon is always more than welcome too. You can support me via Patreon at the link down below. It's patreon.com/Agostinho. Via Patreon, I'm going to do one bonus show via the Patreon members only. That's coming up this week, as well as you get access to this show in full audio format before it comes out anywhere else. So you get in full rich 320 kpbs files, right, direct to your ear tops, only on Patreon. So make sure you sign up there for little as $1, the equivalent of £1 in the UK. You can sign up to my Patreon. But yeah, how you guys doing, man? How you guys feeling? Hope you guys are well. As you can see, new surroundings for the temporary time. I just thought, why not book a little time in the studio so I can record something and shout as much as I want. Hopefully that should be good for you, because doing it at home is not the best. I don't want to disturb the neighbors with my stupid antics, so why not book some time in here and talk to you guys in a much clearer way. Hopefully you notice a bit of difference, a bit of an inflection in my voice, a little bit of a pep in my step per se. So if you're liking the vibe in here and you want me to continue doing this, and make sure you let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts regarding that. But yeah, man, how's it going? How are you? I know for myself, I wouldn't say I'm in lockdown fatigue. I just want to get this over and done with so I can get back to my regular scheduled life. I think most people are like that too. I'm happy with the changes, I'm happy with this idea that now the whole entire world has sort of accepted the idea of working from home, because there are plenty of places I worked prior where the idea of working from home was super foreign. It was like a luxury, right? Only the lucky few were permitted to do so. So it's great to hear, it's great to see that it's been sort of embraced by the masses in general. Like a thing that was only reserved for startups is now being embraced by all corporations for the most part, of course, if you can, right? If you don't have the means to, and you have to stand in a shop somewhere, work behind a bar, then it's a bit different. But I would also assume if you do work in the service industry, this break from constantly serving people, being around people's different energies and stuff, is pretty refreshing. And I'm sure once you get back to work, you're going to be in a far better place mentally, physically, to kind of give your all and apply yourself in a much better way than you did prior. I can imagine so. I'm not too sure what you think, but I know for me, when I used to work in shops, talking to the same people every day can get a bit boring. There's only so many conversations you can have about someone's boyfriend, girlfriend, mom, dad, dog, cat, right? It gets a bit boring. So having some new energy, and the new energy usually came in the shape of customers. Whenever customers came in, you get super excited because of somebody new to talk to. So I'm assuming this break should act as like a little respite, right? A much needed respite, because especially in the service industry, I remember one of my great managers at Dr. Martens one time telling me, when I naively asked about public holiday off or something, and he laughed. It's like, dude, this is retail. There is no such thing as public holidays. The only time this store is closed, I think I remember him saying, was Christmas Day, legitimately. So retail shops for the most part are open 364 days out of the year. That is mad, isn't it, to think that? But hey, what can you do? Anyway, we are here chilling, doing the thing. My hair's looking mad. I think I need to sort it ASAP. The last haircut I had was a couple of weeks ago, just prior to the whole lockdown 2.0. I probably should have got another one just before lockdown, exactly, so I can be looking fresh and stuff. But hey, this is better than what I did in the beginning, right? I think I let my hair grow for a good 6 months, I think, right? And then I finally got it trimmed. So this is, it's not the best, but it's getting there little by little. So here we are, plenty of stuff to talk about, loads of cultural commentary to dig in deep on. So make sure you grab yourself a drink and a little nibble, wherever you've got, and let's dive on deep. mad stuff to get through. So, topic number one to get in on is this backlash that's been happening at the moment with the DJ Mag Top 100 DJs, right? And I have no idea why. Do not ask me why this is happening. It's just bizarre. I don't understand it. The list itself, I mentioned in the previous podcast, is pretty pony, right? This is the list itself. DJs, I think for the most part, just send out a link to their fans and tell them to go and vote. They basically just have to click a little, I'm pretty sure it's like a form, like a Google form or something similar to that, like a little button you just press next to the DJ you like. You enter your email, and that's basically it, right? And of course, the DJs on this list are, not the kind of DJs I personally listen to. They're more so in the commercial, contemporary house sort of thing, like I mentioned previously. The kind of DJs you'd hear playing or making a mix for like a FIFA game or something nonsense like that, right? So at the top, you got David Guetta. Number 2, Dimitri Vegas and Like Mike. Number 3, Martin Garrix. Number 4, Armin van Buren. And number 5, some guy called Alok, right? And a whole bunch of other people who've got some terrible headshots. Mostly Caucasian men of some deviation, it looks like, as well, for the most part. But, a pretty pony list. Who gives a crap, innit? A few introductions of people that I would be familiar with, like Nina Kravitz and Amelie Lenz and all that sort of stuff, and Jamie Jones. But for the most part, it's servicing a certain segment of the industry, of the scene, that I'm just not that tapped into, but also appreciate, like I said in the previous podcast, that there are people out there that really enjoy this type of music, right? You only have to look at the attendees at Tomorrowland, right? Fair enough, they're all ketted out and mollied out of their faces, but they absolutely love these people, right? They're having the best time. They get all dressed up, they bring the flags of their countries that they're representing, and they have an absolute blast, right? So fair enough, cool, do your thing. But the backlash has been so odd within DJ world, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that RA don't do their polls anymore, right? And in my opinion, RA had the best polls from what I remember, right? This is kind of them laying out the groundwork for the 2016 ones I got here on the screen. And look how RA did the polls, right? RA poll from 2016 says the following: vote for your favorite DJs and live acts of 2016 in RA's year-end poll. Right, and it says the following: we're getting close to the end of the year, which means that it's time for our readers to let us know their favorite DJs and live acts of 2016. Who melted minds? Who sets blew the roof off? We want to know. Blah blah blah. So look how the voting is done on the RA one, or how it was done previously. Voting is restricted to people who were RA members before the polls open. Apologies to anyone shut out by this. It's just to help us keep the results legitimate. You can only vote for the artists who played at events in your RA diary this year. Check your calendar to jog your memory. How amazing is that? And that's why I mentioned previously, RA poll might have had its issues, and I know some DJs got their nose put out of place because the poll I think some people just might have got annoyed by it. Again, I wasn't on Techno Twitter at the time, but I'm assuming some people just got annoyed because the poll just accurately reflected what was going on in real life. And it can be sometimes an uncomfortable truth of the industry, right? That the same 5 to 15 DJs get booked in the same places and always end up in the top 20, 30 of DJs. It is what it is. But I thought the magic of the RA poll came about outside the top 30. You got to see a real variety of people from all different walks of life, all different areas of the world. And it kind of gave you an understanding of DJs that you probably hadn't known about. You should probably keep your eye on. And that's where I kind of found a lot of people. I think I might have discovered Motor City Drum Ensemble through an RA DJ poll. Again, he's somebody that a lot of people on Twitter aren't a fan of because of his name, but he's a very proficient DJ, somebody that I rate a lot. I think even DJ Tennis I might have found via an RA DJ poll. So they did it the right way. But again, over time, they got caught up in the whole, social, I wouldn't say social justice, but the politics of it all. Some people felt like they got left out. I'm assuming it had a disproportionate influence in people's booking fees and, whatever it may be, blah, 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 blah. So now the only polls that we're left with are the DJ Mag polls, which, are just prime for a bit of scamming and botting, right? Because it's just literally a link that your fans basically go click and select your name in from the list of DJs, and if you accumulate the most votes, you're the best DJ in the world. So essentially, if I will put a page up myself, I could in some way crowdsource people to kind of get me up on that list. And of course, these lists can be very instrumental in terms of changing a perspective of a DJ's career, right, from the beginning to end. So one person who has a lot to say about this is this guy that writes this newsletter called First Floor, which is a really cool newsletter kind of talking about all things concerning electronic music and dance music culture. It's by a guy called Sean Reynaldo. And he says the following. The newsletter is called The Other Election. It says here, no, How about the election? Pretty crazy, right? He says, no, not the US presidential election. I'm talking about the DJ Mag and its annual top 100 DJ poll. The results were unveiled on Saturday night and were followed the next day by the publication's alternative top 100 DJ list, which compiled by combining votes in the top 100 DJ poll with house and techno sales data on Beatport. Okay, before I continue, allow me to disclose that I have previously contributed to DJ Mag as a freelancer. So, DJ Mag has been running the top 100 DJ list since 1993. It's become an annual tradition and is probably one of the most popular pieces of content they run all year. It's no coincidence that the publication's homepage has a top 100 list tab. People love to hate it list, and across the online media, readers everywhere are driven by an odd compulsion to see what's on them, even when they know they're going to hate the results, which is why there's some of the most highly clickable, i.e. profitable content on the internet, which is very true. You see it happening a lot with a double XL list, freshman list and all that malarkey, with like the, who's the best rapper, classic albums, best live band. There's always, people love listicles. They do really well. BuzzFeed has essentially, built their entire business on that model. So we know the vibes, right? It continues here. So it says, that very compulsion is what prompted me to look at these DJ Mag lists yesterday. Having seen them in previous years, I certainly knew what to expect. Bland artists from the world of EDM, tech house, and commercial techno compiled into a list at which white men are even more overrepresented than usual. Queer representation is minimal, and a handful of women who managed to make the list mostly look like fashion models, of course, right? And that's a very odd thing I've noticed too in EDM. I'm not sure why that is the case. Well, I know why it's the case, isn't it? Because it's all about image. But I wonder why that is. Maybe it's just, part of me thinks there's obviously something wrong with the fact that every female DJ that is in that EDM world looks like they could have come off a model runway somewhere, right? A fashion show runway somewhere. But there's also part of me that thinks there must be a reason why that kind of person is consistently drawn to that scene, and why that scene consistently props up those kind of people. Because it's not like they're actively looking for alternative voices to represent their scene. I know they exist, right? Because within a subculture, within a niche, there's always a niche within a niche, right? There's obviously kids doing, there's kids out there screaming, no, that's not real EDM. We're doing the real EDM, right? I'm sure those kids definitely exist. But why is it the ones that are making the most money or all of the money all look one way? There isn't much kind of variation. Like, I swear to God, like if I did a blind test on somebody else, a fan of EDM, and told them to pick out what, like, to have to differentiate between DJ sets of, of 5 DJs in that scene, there's no way they'll be able to tell them apart. I don't think so. From the stuff I've heard on Tomorrowland, they're all pretty samey. It continues here. These 2020 editions didn't disappoint, even if you set aside the generally abysmal nature of the music represented in the top 100 list. It's telling that David Guetta, a man famously credited wrongfully by ABC News as a grandfather of electronic dance music 2018, took the #1 spot. The highest ranked female act, there are only 11 on the list, is Nervo at 20. People of color make about 10% of selected artists, and perhaps half of them are black. Now, I don't really mind that personally, because I've never actually gone to DJ Mag top 100 list for representation. I like the fact that they're so set in their ways and so kind of behind the kind of woke times that they just put out the most hard-hitting list with the biggest people, the DJs with the massive private jets and the big riders and the crazy pyrotechnics on stage. I'm happy they just promote that. There's no real confusion about if they represent the kind of music that I'm into, right? The more underground, techno, house, disco-y side of things that is probably a little bit more truer to the roots of dance music. I don't mind that they don't represent that, because I know exactly what I'm going to DJ Mag for. The only confusion, I guess, comes when they put out these articles that are pretty good over the last few years, and maybe even this year too. Loads of really good analysis on like club culture, economics of dance music, all that sort of stuff they do really good on. But in terms of representing the stuff that I listen to, I don't mind, and I don't really care about the representation. But again, I'm interested to know about the kids that are in this scene who actually give a shit. Do they feel left out that they're not included on it? Like, because I look at DJ Mag, what top 100 is like the most commercialist of the top 100 lists that exist. So do you really expect to see like an underground sort of SoundCloud DJ person that's kind of bubbling up on social to be represented on there? I don't think so. Everyone on that list is probably represented by like CAA and WME. Do you know what I mean? There's no mucking around on that list. I don't think so in that regard. Anyway, continues. First published in 2018 as a way to champion house and techno DJs who have been edged out of top 100 EDM list, the alternative top 100 list is a somewhat musically palatable While it's still very commercial fans of the underground, I'm using that term very loosely, electronic music can at least find a few names that ring familiar. It's also a more diverse list of Blight, not by much. Out of the 100 artists, 21 are female, 5 of whom appear in the top 10 and include the one spot for Charlotte DeWitt. Around 70% of the list also went to people of color, and more than 2/3 of them are black. Both of these lists relied heavily on the import of reader votes, which highlight two key things. One, what the mainstream electronic music audience really care about, and even after months of discourse focus on battling racism. Two, the power of the most commercial electronic music artists and their teams have an influence on these lists by mobilizing fans. Yeah, true, but I sometimes think people just don't want to. They're not happy about the results. They're just not happy that the results don't necessarily fall in line with what they think. For instance, I'm sure there are some DJs out there who are botting the system and making sure that they can kind of like maximize the amount of votes that they get. But for the most part, a lot of the votes that they're getting are legitimate. What percentage of them? I don't know. But if you're a really big DJ and you tell your fan base of active listeners that you engage with on social, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, to vote for you on a list, and in order to win something, imagine if they did something like that. I'm sure some of them do that. You win a free headphone, a bit of merch with my signature on it, whatever it may be. There's gonna be a lot of people that are gonna enter that because it's literally the most the barrier of entry for you to kind of select your DJ that you want to vote for is really low. You just click the link, you select your thing, add your email, and that's basically done, right? There's no kind of safeguards, no sort of barriers of entry similar to the RA poll where you have to be registered prior to the poll going live and you have to have gone to the event, it has to be in your diary, blah, blah, blah. So I think sometimes when people get their nose put out bent about this, it's more so because they don't like the results, the nature of them. And again, yes, the results are very whitewashed and they're very mainstream, but that's the industry. I don't necessarily see how they're going to effectively change that, in my opinion. That's the only thing I see with that. Continuing, the editor that DJ Mag must know, or at least suspected, that the dynamics were still at play, which raises an important question. Why publish a top 100 list at all? The obvious answer is that the publication wanted and quite possibly needed the traffic and social media engagement. Although I'm not privy to DJ Mag's balance sheet, I'm safe to assume that the ad revenue has been hard to come by during the pandemic, especially when the club and festival promoters and the clients have all cancelled. Represented a rare chance to make a 2020 event a virtual one. So yeah, hey man, there's a long article that you can read regarding it, but again, I'm just confused why people are like upset or like surprised that the DJ Mag 100 list is representative of what they go and see when they're going out and clubbing. It's never going to be that. It's equivalent to like people getting annoyed that the Grammys don't recognize an artist that you know and love. It's the most commercial side of the industry. There's loads of payola involved, loads of really backhanded industry bullshit and politics that goes to play at it. And again, it can be gamed pretty easily. This is why I think RA should bring back their poll. But, I'm sure that put a lot of people's nose out of bent, but it really needs to come back. That was probably one of the best polls. It was great for discovering new artists, and it was a great way for artists to essentially be propped up and get given a little bit of a nod and encouragement that, hey, we've seen all the good work you're doing. You've impacted a lot of people's lives. People had a good time at your event. Imagine if they opened up the RA polls when life goes back to normal and we have a vaccine and we go to clubbing. Imagine how enthusiastic people would be to share how much of a good time they had at this event with their favorite DJ that played. And imagine if they open up the comments too off the back of that, and you could actually engage with people, discuss stuff in your local community. It will be absolutely amazing. Hopefully this is a reminder to RA to like, hey, let's differentiate a little bit. Let's allow DJ Mag top 100 list to exist, but also let's allow the RA list to exist too, so we can have some level of balance in this scene at the moment. Because right now everyone is getting annoyed at things that they probably shouldn't be getting annoyed at, in my opinion. Let me just turn off this aircon. Okay, sorry about that. Somehow my computer crashed. I don't know why that happened, but hey, we are back in the sector. Doesn't matter. We keep on going. If you're listening via the audio, you will have no idea. I'll seamlessly transition between both pieces of content, clip them together. But if you're watching via the YouTube, there might be a bit of a skip in where I am sitting. But rest assured, everything has been handled and we're okay. Okay, so heading back into the news, one more bit of information regarding electronic music. Carrying on from my DJ conversation. NTS unfortunately have to leave their East London studio and move to a temporary space nearby due to, in part, gentrification, that dirty, dirty G word. Again, personally for me, I'm a bit conflicted because I've never listened, confession time, I've never in my life listened to NTS, not one show, not one iota, not one time. Again, to be completely honest, I might be a little bit biased. I might be a little bit, not biased. I might be a little, might have my, what's that word, that term you use for something that might affect your decision making? Regardless, right? The reason why is because prior, I think years ago, when I was putting on nights in Dawson and stuff, I must have asked the dude that was founding it or doing it to do a show for the night we did, and this was when everyone else had a show on there, and I kind of got a bit big timed, right? I wouldn't say he said no, but he kind of gave me that sort of big time, I'm the big dada in the scene, which he definitely is and still is that main guy in the industry, in the scene, kind of attitude. And if you've known me outside of this or anywhere, from what I can just let you know now, I don't respond well to that sort of stuff. It kind of really triggers me. I've had loads of bad experiences with people in the scene trying to, big time me and just act a little bit too, just kind of turn their nose up at you and act a little bit too cool for school. I've never liked it. I've always kind of favored people who just get the work done, kind of get, make advances in their scene, in their industry via hard work, via networking, all that good stuff. But the kind of shitty attitude that people have in London, I'm not really a fan of. So that happened, and then I guess prior to that, I never listened to it anyway, but I went to the show because obviously it'd be a good bit of promotion for the night we were doing. And to be honest, everyone at that time was doing a show. It wasn't like our show would have been any worse than whatever was available at the time. This is at the inception of NTS when it was like first starting. Kind of got big time out of it, and I think ever since I've just deleted it out of my brain. That it tends to happen whenever I have like a bad run-in with somebody. Instead of kind of holding on to hate, I'll just delete them or just like, pretend that they don't exist. And I guess this is part of it. So a part of me is like, meh, who gives a shit? But then obviously for the scene in general, for, online radio scene, industry and all that malarkey, it's obviously a big loss that they're leaving such a influential and highly recognizable spot. And for me personally, it really goes to show like the evils of gentrification. I'm not that against gentrification. Maybe I'm in the minority here, kind of saying it, and people might kind of cancel me. But I don't think gentrification is always bad. I think in some respects, like, I look at the area that I'm familiar with in East London. The Olympics came to that area and kind of gave that area a whole complete new lease of life. Of course, a lot of the promises that were laid bare were, not really delivered or in any way, shape or form. That was kind of obvious when they were first announced. But in terms of changing the overall vibe of an area, providing jobs and lasting memories, a kind of, what's it called, Olympic legacy? I think the legacy the Olympics left in East London has sort of like cleaned it up a little bit, right? Of course, bad things still happen. Kids are still unfortunately dying through, stabbing incidences. People are still getting robbed and all that malarkey that happens in East London. But for the most part, a lot of the good stuff that's happened, you can't say has been as a consequence of the Olympics. So gentrification can help in that way. And they also did this thing where a lot of the houses that were built around the Olympic Village, or no, around Stratford International, some portion of those houses were given to the local council so they can divvy up to people who needed temporary and permanent accommodation. So there's some good stuff that can come from it. But the side of gentrification I hate is this side where, for instance, that NTS studio in East London, in Dawson, in that little square, is iconic, right? Everyone knows it. Everyone has been there, seen somebody they know playing outside of there, hung out around there, got some jerk chicken or a patty or something from in near that area. You know what that area is about. So part of the reason why that area is culturally relevant and why a developer would want to build a high scale apartment building somewhere there is because of the attention that people from NTS have brought to it, right? The sort of the clout they've brought to it, the hype, the cool factor. So for these building contractors, these housing developers to come in and just completely dismiss whoever's been there previously, not give them any possibility of maybe housing their studio in an adjacent place somewhere near there, or maybe repurposing the space in some interesting way, whatever it is, just working in tandem, whoever was there, because they're the reason why you come there. They just come in like a bulldozer, lay the money down and completely eviscerate whatever vibe and whatever core factor that exists in there. And it essentially kills whatever vibe that was there already. That whole Dalston Kingston Street is already dead as it is. Licensing applications for a lot of those clubs have been revoked, especially late licenses. A lot of the iconic places like the Alibi, which I spent most of my time in, my kind of really formative years of my life, kind of growing up and being exposed to new music and different people, was in that space. That's completely gone now. Loads of other spaces are popping up, but they're not as great as the ones that came prior. And it's just a whole different vibe to Dalston Kingston now. You go on that road, it's very commercial, it's very I don't know, it's just full of shops now, right? There's no real nightlife vibe to it anymore, and these sort of things don't necessarily help. And again, why would you want to move to a place such as Dawson to live above NTS when the NTS isn't even there anymore? Doesn't make sense. But continue. This article from RA delves deeper into it. It says online station has been forced out by redevelopments in Dawson's Gillette Square. That's the place where it's called, right? Gillette Square. Let's zoom in a bit here. It says NTS has left its original studio in Dawson Gillette Square. The popular online station has moved to a larger temporary space in the same square, which is being redeveloped by the Hawkins Brown and YN studio. According to the Architects Journal, the joint project will deliver maybe I spoke too soon. 1,500 square meters of mixed-use space. NTS hasn't confirmed a long-term plan for the new studio, though its second studio remains its original spot. Okay, fair enough. So they've kind of housed them somewhere within that little zone. Open in 2011, the NTS studio became famous for its open hatch, where artists could pose for daily photos amid the sticker-covered walls and door. The latter, Instagram confirms, has been rescued for the developers. NTS is now an essential node in the global electronic music network, with outposts in Los Angeles, Shanghai, Manchester. Sorry, node, right? Not node. So yeah, so fair enough. Maybe they've done it the right way in this gentrification. I kind of spoke too soon. I didn't read the entire article. So it looks like they've kind of rehoused them within that same sort of development. That is really cool. And this is some images of them tearing it down. But again, I'm a big believer in just keeping things as they are. Part of the magic, or part of the allure, part of the appeal of going to places like Berlin, which I talk about constantly on this channel, but please excuse me. Part of the allure of it is that you go there in 2015, you stumble upon some amazing hole in the wall somewhere that you love, and more likely than not, if you go back in 2021, you're going to find that same place there exactly as you left it. Same decor, same staff, same smell, same ambience. Nothing has changed. And that kind of, adds to the appeal of that place, right? Because you know what you're going to get. It's sad that in London, for the most part, some of our more legendary nights, legendary nightclubs are having to be rehoused in different locations, and they're trying to rekindle the magic, make it a new, and it never really works. Like, one kind of example I can say is maybe Secret Sundays, right? From the time that I kind of stumbled upon that promotion, or those promoters, and the DJ duo, was then they used to do the events at the Peanut Factory. And I'm gonna say, I forgot what other warehouse it was in Shoreditch, right? That they used to always do events at, and that was part of the vibe. That's part of the allure of Secret Sundays, right? They used to put these events in these really unconventional warehouse spaces, and then book some really eclectic DJs. And now when they rehouse them or put them in Corsica Studio, that's not really the same thing. So it's just annoying that, imagine if you came to the first Secret Sundays, or you came to the first few parties in the first 5 years, and now you're trying to find it again and rekindle that magic. It's just not the same product anymore. And I just don't see why they just couldn't leave them to be housed in that unit for the time being, especially whilst the building works are being completed. I'm guessing a lot of building works is going to be, would there be a delay, I'm guessing, with COVID? I'm assuming so. Not everything's getting built on time. I don't know. It just doesn't seem, it seems a little bit OTT. And again, we've got some pictures here of the main dude with this, a panel of the stickers. Some NTS again rescuing that. That's cool. So a lot of people are going to be happy that that's being rescued, and I'm sure they're going to go into bigger and brighter things. But that's a shame, again, just for online radio culture, I guess, in general, and the London scene. But hey, we should be used to this by now, innit? All of our places always get bulldozed and taken away from us. Okay, next on the list, what do we have here? Let's move on to this, probably. Let's go. Yeah, let's go here. Oh no, let's go here. Actually, let's go here. Yeah, let's go here. Let's go here. Let's go here. So, finally, good news for myself. Good flipping news. The hat that I've been waiting for from, I'm gonna say her name again, MOWALOLA, right? MOWALOLA or MOWALOLA. Trucker caps that I've been waiting for, what, 2.5 months to get. Of course, she debuted them on her Instagram a couple of times, had some of her cute babes wearing them and all that good stuff, and, you know, drummed up the hype in a pretty good way. And in terms of supporting a young designer in London who's kind of doing some interesting things, of course, the announcement that she's going to be the creative director of the Yeezy Gap collection kind of boost her profile, but she was obviously doing big things prior to that regardless in London and globally. Highly, you know, sought after and recognized fashion designer, brings out a hat that's the quintessential entry level product to get everybody to buy whatever she's, you know, to buy into her brand, and eventually kind of evolve upwards into some of her mainline stuff that she puts out. And the trucker hat is great, right? It's an amazing piece of product, but for some odd reason she did that annoying thing that a lot of new designers do, where they put out a pre-order link and they say it's going to ship within 12 weeks. It doesn't ship within 12 weeks. And then they essentially use that money to make the product that didn't exist in the first place. That's the annoying thing. I think because I come from the school, because I don't come from the school, because I'm a fan of Apple. Apple is a good example, right? Apple will announce a product, like, you know, a whole suite of MacBooks and iPhones and stuff. And more likely than not, they're always available the next day. They're available the following day, the following week, instantaneously. You can purchase them. They don't show concepts. They don't show renderings. They're actually real, ready to, you know, market ready products that they have in their hands, test driving, showing on the screen that you're going to get in your hands too. So it's a shame when I see these designers go out, make a couple of hats, put them on their friends, and then essentially just use those to drum up hype, but not produce them in the background because they're afraid of maybe producing the hats and then not be able to sell them. But that's part of being a designer. That's part of having a small business. Sometimes you just don't sell stuff. I remember when I was selling, this is a bad example, but I was selling curl sponges, right? Remember when that was a big thing? I ordered like, I don't know, 500 from Alibaba, and I was going to barber shops all around East London with an IKEA bag on my shoulder and just slinging these hair sponges all over the place, right? And the first time that I did them, I pretty much sold the whole entire inventory of 500 sponges. But then the second time when I ordered them again, the hype already kind of dwindled. People already started getting their own supplies, and I had, I don't know, like 500 sponges left in my mum's house somewhere, just collecting dust, which I eventually had to end up giving away. And, you know, my brothers ended up taking a few of them themselves. But that is part of business. It is what it is. You just buy the stock. Sometimes people buy it, sometimes people don't. So that was a disappointing thing. But finally, we got some good news. She announced here, babes, your trucker hats will be shipped on the 16th. So that's sometime next week. Hopefully, she doesn't, you know, stall and delay on that again. But some really good imagery to kind of go along with the actual announcement itself. There's some, obviously, the amazing Sony Walkman flip on her logo is really great, and that's hat. So I think that might be the actual color that I'm getting, the blue with the white. I think there's the other one is the red with the white as well. But yeah, happy news for myself. I'm over the moon. Happy I finally got my product, and I don't know, man. It's hard to. It's hard, isn't it? Like, I know if you're a young designer, you know, getting hold of inventory, especially during COVID, must be very difficult. But I just think, unfortunately, people's expectation, like mine included, are just set so high when it comes to stuff like Amazon. I know it's not, you can't compare an independent design to Amazon, but unfortunately, because everything that we get is instantaneous, now you can click a button and get a book delivered to me today if it's in stock. An iPhone cable, also all manner of nonsense, right? I can order a £1,500 Rick Owens jacket from Essence in Canada and probably get it by Friday, right? So there's a lot of stuff that you can buy instantaneously. So when a young designer comes up and they, you know, put a hat up for pre-order, but don't tell you it's a pre-order, then delay in sending it to you, then don't answer in messages when it's, you know, people are asking for updates, and then send it 2 months later, it's hard to have sympathy for it. But again, I'm happy it's been delivered. I'm happy I'm going to get it finally on my head, and hopefully I'll be able to make a review for you guys sometime soon. Moving on, we have some interesting news regarding Supreme Skateboarding New York. They don't even call themselves Supreme Skateboards, do they? Supreme Skateboards. No, I don't think so. It's just Supreme now. But anyway, Supreme, the quintessential streetwear brand, a brand that set the pace for all other brands. Well, not in my experience. My brand that set pace for me was a Baby Nape, especially during the Nego years. That was one of my, it still is easily one of my favorite brands, a brand that I'm always kind of looking for the vintage and the cool products to kind of purchase. But anyway, Supreme have gone a bit, I wouldn't say stiff, acquired. Yeah, have they sold out? Effectively, it's selling out. It must be. Supreme have basically sold their entire company to a holding company called VF or something that owns Vans and North Face. And I'm wondering, could this be the end of Supreme? Could this be the end of their dominance? Could this be the end of their cool factor? Because part of the reason why, in my opinion, why they're as cool as they were was this idea that they were an independent brand started up by James Jebbia, kind of an offshoot from the stuff that he was doing in New York in the early 90s or late 90s. He obviously saw a gap in the market for premium quality clothing for skateboarders. They were, used to wearing some pretty dreadful basics. So he came in, put a brand together, had the shop staffed with, skateboarders from the local community, and essentially had a bit of a hands-off approach in terms of representing and fronting a brand, but had people that are actually connected with skateboarding, that were entrenched in the community, representing it, repping it as hard as possible, which is why Supreme came in with little to no resistance in the skateboarding community, apart from the times that they sort of dance with the hype beast, right? A bit of salsa, but for the most part, very well respected. So anyway, this really cool article from New York Times details a bit of the questions out there at the moment. It says, can Supreme stay cool while being corporate, or while going corporate? Sorry. It's written by Vanessa Friedman, who is a little bit hyperbolic and stuff she talks about, but I like her writings regardless. So it says the following: once upon a time, just an underground brand called Supreme began to percolate into mainstream. A prominent star writer and characterized its appeal to the New York Times as a company that refuses to sell out. Closely held secret to skate kids and streetwear aficionados everywhere, it was an insider famous for its Barbara Kruger-esque tabloid happy red and white logo, its ability to synthesize all sorts of cultural references in a hoodie, and its hotly anticipated random product drops. That was 2012. In 2014, the company accepted its first private equity investment in the Good Partners. In 2017, it sold another 50% to the Carlyle Group, the PE megalith, and this week it announced that VF Corporation, the owner of 19 brands, including Timberland, Vans, and the North Face, with a reported 2020 revenue of $10.5 billion, had bought the whole thing. The deal valued Supreme at more than $2.1 billion and completed a part for an indie brand darling to the heart of the establishment. Sellout complete? Yes. Of course, laying the groundwork as it is. I think for myself personally, I was purchasing Supreme. I'm going to say my first piece might have come around 2007, 2006. That's when I kind of got into it. And looking at the dates, that's also probably around the time that I stopped buying Supreme, was 2012, 2014, when they started to get the investment from all these other different places. Now, that isn't because the investment sort of like changed the product, but I did see a change in the customers and obviously a change in the people that were buying it. And actually, no, I lie. The change for me came stylistically when Noah Barbesian, I forgot how you pronounce his name, from of course Noah NY, when he left and he went to start up Noah, the aesthetic of the brand completely changed, and there was a lot more logos, a lot more scripts, a lot more bright colors. That's when I remember the shorts. The shorts were the first indicator. The shorts were really great prior, when Noah was still at the brand. He'd make some really cool surf, swim shorts, running shorts, really nicely done, great lining, great little details, embroidery bits, little bits of finishing. But in the moment he left, the shorts started immediately to be emblazoned with Supreme written on the back of the bum, massive box logos on the front, like really odd stuff. And that really kind of set me off a little bit and kind of, made me kind of feel a way about the brand. And then I think, again, you kind of get older, your style sort of evolves a little bit, and it stops being your sort of basics brand, in terms, if that can be said. Supreme was, for me, was sort of like my basics that I'd wear in terms of that streetwear sort of clothing, where it comes to t-shirts, snapbacks, hoodies, and outerwear. I thought they kind of killed it. And then I think that also might have lined up with the time that Uniqlo came to the UK, and they obviously started selling outerwear and kind of menswear pieces that, in my opinion, kind of suited me a little bit more and were very quintessentially, that sort of like Japanese streetwear sort of aesthetic that you kind of might have seen in, I don't know, what's that brand called? What's that brand that makes the basics? Doesn't matter. But you know what I mean? They'd make like really great down jackets, really great denim jackets, great pullovers, decent trench coats, nice long sleeve tops, thermal tops, decent selvage denim. Loads of pieces that you can kind of work with that you don't really need to kind of have your whole wardrobe be entirely Supreme. So that's when I sort of lost interest in it myself. It continues here. Lauded as a win for VF, whose stock rose 12.5% on the Monday. The agreement was also seen as a sign of the grown-up status of streetwear market, now officially recognized by Wall Street, which is, makes complete sense. What exactly it means for Supreme, aside from money, is a more complicated story. Though the money in the time of the pandemic is not to be underestimated, after all, Supreme founder James Jebbia also told the Times that the brand needs to be core to survive, and the core and quarterly results don't really mix well. That's true, but there's part of me that, I don't know, not getting into one's finances, but I wonder how much money they actually need to be operational, because they've received a lot of investment over the years, right? Two big chunks of investment in the early 2000s, or what did they say there, in 2014 and whatever it was, 2014 and 2017, and now companies come out and bought the entire thing. I wonder how much they actually needed to make it actually profitable, right? So I don't know. Part of me thinks it's a little bit unnecessary, but I'm sure there's obviously a greater vision in mind. Maybe the expansion into Italy and Milan, right? That's meant to be a rumored store. I'm sure a lot of that's been affected by COVID, and COVID in general must have affected their business, but a lot of their business comes mainly from online, I'm assuming, especially when they didn't have a lot of retail stores. Most of their business outside the stores in America was definitely online. People kind of reselling items, purchasing it for their own collection, blah, blah, blah. It always sell out. So I'm not too sure how that marries up, but again, they've got prime retail locations around the world. I'm sure those aren't cheap as well, so maybe it justifies this big sale. It continues. VF said it was going to leave the brand alone. The leadership, including Mr. Jebbia, will stay in charge. His headquarters will remain in New York. That's never going to happen, though, innit? You know that, innit? If you purchase a brand for, what was it, $2.5 billion, there's no way you're going to leave them alone. You're definitely going to want to get your influence in there. You're going to want to lend a hand, lend some leadership skills, whatever. So the end is nigh for Supreme, because it always happens to most brands. It's really impossible to get swallowed up by a big conglomerate such as VF and not get somehow diluted in some way, shape, or form. It continues. And certainly VF has a good track record with its outdoor workwear brands, which has gone from naff to cool. As with Timberland and Dickies, VF management said it just wants to support the Supreme's future growth. And speaking of growth, there was so much potential. Only 12 stores plus one very healthy e-commerce site. Only, so I wonder what they want to do there going forward. But therein lies the problem. Supreme's ownership chose mass distribution over remaining venerable good. Webb Smith, a founder of 2PM, a newsletter on media and commerce, tweeted, a Viblen good being a product that increases in desirability even as it increases in price, given its aura of exclusivity. Okay, cool. After all, among other things, Supreme was built on the principle of scarcity. It's what drove its acolytes crazy. It's what made them stand in line or camp out for hours to snatch up limited edition hoodies or Damien Hirst skate decks, or most famously, a branded bricks. It drove up the resale value of said items in sometimes astonishing way. At the price height, the brick was going for $1,000. You remember back in the day when James Jebbia did an interview with, I forgot what site it was. It was on like a BT domain. And he said something like how much he hates the resale culture and he wants kids to just get a hold of the items, and he wish he could do something different to change it. He seemed quite passionate and quite sincere. It's funny, like, where it's kind of gone now, right? Where they sort of like, they don't say they lean into it, but they just accept what it is and just do what they do, I guess. But it's just interesting to see how it's gone up from there. Continue. And there, it gave birth to private chat rooms and Reddit threads where Supremeites shared intel on what was coming and why the complete set of 248 Supreme skate decks sold for $800,000. That's something 2019. That's a bargain now, though, if you're considering. Or maybe they overpaid for it, but I don't think so. I think stuff like that was definitely going to go up in value over time. And again, Reddit threads, cool, but do you remember back in the day going on Splay forums and talking about Supreme, or going on Superfuture? Superfuture had a pretty cool Supreme fan base on there, actually. There was a pretty cool guys there that really did Supreme justice on that forum. Some great times. I purchased some really bargain basement stuff on there. I might have bought a legitimate Box Logo hoodie on Superfuture forums for like $200. Those were the days. Anyway, it continues. It's part of what Supreme's so special. It's part of what made Supreme so special in a world where even the most exclusive luxury brands had hundreds of stores, and most chief executives, when asked how big was big enough, would only offer, I'll know when I see it, and they hadn't seen it yet. It's part of what made Supreme such a desirable partner in the dating game of stuff. In the dating game of stuff, it was hard to get. Cool. It's also what allowed Supreme to engage in a delicate balancing act of both framing its products as an ironic meta commentary on the culture of consumption for generations that wanted to reject their trappings, and also exploit the culture for its own ends. Maybe not so much anymore, though the brand has once called the Chanel of downtown streetwear, which is definitely not anymore. It's worth noting that Chanel is still independent. Now Supreme no longer is. And that's the telling part. Part of the reason why I love Rick Owens and why I wear it consistently, I've got the pants on now at the moment, is because, for the most part, Rick remains, I think he has majority ownership of it, and he's only given the other half to a very close confidant and friend who's also a big Rick Owens fan. He's always dressed head to toe in it. I think it's some dark haired dude. I forgot his name. But for the most part, it's fairly, independent in how it operates, how it runs. Of course, the collections are, in some people's eyes, quite derivative, but in my opinion, they're always an evolution of the previous season. He's always very good at kind of touching upon what's going on in the cultural zeitgeist without being too, too cringy, too corny. And the clothes are just great, right? The culture around them is great. The people that buy them are awesome. Great little community. Michelle Lamy is a great advocate and ambassador for it. Rick, of course, looks stupendous in his stuff. There's that guy at the moment now. What's his name? Is it Tyrone? The guy that's a model and I think a design consultant for Rick Owens at the moment, the blonde guy. He's a really good ambassador for it. So it's some really good people out there who kind of represent Rick Owens the right way. And it's sort of for that, made by a fashion, enthusiast and fan for fashion enthusiasts and fans, right? But it's hard to see Supreme and think the same thing, right? They kind of occupy the same sort of lane that Lakai is operating, right? And that's the kind of issue at hand. Anyway, it continues. In his prepared statement, Mr. Jebbia said the deal would allow the brand to maintain its culture and approach, but the one thing Wall Street demands is growth, either through more products or stores. As the headline in the Footwear News said, analysts, the VF Supreme marriage is going to be bigger than forecast. Of course, there's no way they're going to allow Supreme to just have 12 stores and have one retail outlet. They're definitely going to want to expand into different markets. Maybe a retail store in China will be the first thing to see how diluted the brand has got. And of course, the outpost in Milan, maybe something in Holland, wherever they, because they've got one, I guess, in France, in Paris, sorry. So maybe they've got a really big outreach in Holland, I'm assuming, especially in Amsterdam. That would make a lot of sense. But there's no way they're going to allow them just to kind of run the way they are. This sort of like hands-off approach is only for the headlines and the papers. It continues here. Where's their financial folks get bug-eyed and dollar signs, however, fans must see dilution. Perhaps it simply marks the end of an inevitable journey that comes to all great disruptive brands that begin life as outsiders. They subvert the status quo only to pique the interest of the dominant players who absorb their strategies and then go to absorb the other actual sources. And again, if I was younger, I would be a lot more angry at this. It would be a lot more upsetting, but I've moved on from the brand. I've evolved my style. I also understand that people need to make money. They need to keep the lights on. And there are other things at play that are probably playing a factor into why they decided to kind of sell. And of course, being valued at 2.1 billion is no joke. There's no guarantee that the brand is going to remain core for years to come. We see what happened with Baby Nape, which is mostly because they extracted Nigo from it, but since it got swallowed up by the IT company, Bape has never been the same. So there's no guarantee that Supreme will hang around and still be the same thing. So there's no way that you could kind of get that offer come through your email inbox and you just turn it down because you want to stay true to streetwear. And streetwear now, at the moment, what is it really, right? What is it? Is it just the brands? Is it the sort of like merch brands that you buy off some influencer kid on Instagram like Joy Division? Is that streetwear? Is streetwear the stuff that you buy at a concert somewhere when they collaborate with a brand like V-Lone, your favorite artist? Is that streetwear? Is streetwear the stuff that you see in Zoomies? Is streetwear the stuff that you see on Essence? Is streetwear the stuff that you see worn by some YouTube influencers? What is actual streetwear? So sometimes I can understand why a brand want to do that. But hey, I digress. It continues here. Fashion is great at that. See sneakers and all the enfants terribles have to grow up to risk becoming caricatures of themselves. So I know a couple of those on the scene. See Jean-Paul Gaultier. Perhaps this natural evolution and the old guard relaxing into comfortable perch to make way for the next generation is the cycle of a brand's life. So yeah, maybe that's true, but again, it's disappointing if you're a big Supreme fan. Again, myself included. I think there's a lot of brands, one specifically that I kind of like, or two actually, are definitely Patta and Stussy in terms of replacing that sort of Supreme size hole in your collection. Very consistent in what they're putting out at the moment. Whoever's designing for both Patta and Stussy deserves a real round of applause. They're absolutely smashing at the moment. But yeah, man, inevitable downfall, inevitable selling out of Supreme. It was bound to happen. Valuing the brand at 2.1 billion is nothing to scoff at. I'm sure we all had a part to play in it some way, shape or form from the stuff that we resold and bought. And yeah, man, big up them for doing what they're doing. Let's see if it survives. I'd love to know your comments down below, or your thoughts on the issue. Do you think Supreme will remain relevant? Will it will it kind of have that cool factor that it had in the beginning, or will it inevitably die like all great brands do in the end? Let me know in the comments down below. Cool. Okay, next on the list. What else do we have here? We got some other stuff here. We got this stuff. We got that stuff. We got this stuff. Okay, we got this stuff. Okay, let's go here. Yeah, this is pretty interesting. So it looks like my boy Bryan Callen is still involved in some sort of nonsense. Unfortunately, this is an article from People. I'm not too sure what the relevance of this article is. I'm sure they're just trying to kick the guy while he's down, which is annoying. I know he's done a lot of questionable things during the post side of his accusations that have been levied against him in terms of being sexually inappropriate with some women, and of course the most serious of the allegations that he allegedly raped somebody. But the way he's handled it, of course, hasn't been the best. But some of the attacks in the media towards himself and people within the comedy scene, it just left a bit of a sour taste in the mouth, because it doesn't seem like they're really trying to get justice. It just seems they're trying to kind of shit on somebody while they're down, and essentially prop up a friend of theirs who they don't feel like is getting the love and the support that they need. And of course, that's probably not going to work in the long run, but hey, you got to do what you have to do. So it's a headline on an article here from People. It says, husband of Bryan Callen's rape accuser claims comedian is a danger to the entertainment industry. Bryan Callen cannot catch a bloody break. So I'm guessing Mrs. Tigerman's husband is deciding to get out there, put this story out there again, in the hopes of what? Inevitably maybe pressuring Bryan Callen to retract his counter suing case, whatever, against him. Because obviously, if you're familiar with the story, the person in question, wife, accused Bryan Callen of rape. Of course, Bryan Callen adamantly denied that in the most Bryan Callen way possible. And then I'm assuming the husband then went out and started to do what most of these social justice people do, where they kind of wage war on social media, because they feel as if that's the only place they can kind of get some sort of justice. Of course, because the time has elapsed so much, in the case that it's hard to really see a situation where Bryan Callen spends any time behind jail. So the best possible way, the next best option is to get him cancelled culturally, in terms of getting rid of his dates, getting him taken off shows, getting development deals taken off the table, whatever it may be. And he went on a cold campaign doing that at the same time that everyone else was shitting on him, really. But I guess he was a bit more direct with it, going and reaching out to comedy clubs directly, calling them, emailing them, atting them on social. And then Bryan decided it was right and it was a great decision for him to go and countersue this guy. And then the guy goes up and sets up a GoFundMe to kind of fund his legal fees, and it's a complete shit show, right? Of course, Bryan shouldn't have sued the guy in the first place, just brought too much necessary attention to the issue. But I understand in his case, wanting to fight his corner and wanting, wanting to fight his corner and not wanting his livelihood to be completely eviscerated. In his eye, it's due to a what they called unfounded accusations. But anyway, we digress. People article says the following. Gabriel Tigerman, the husband of one of Bryan Callen's rape accusers, is claiming the comedian is a danger to the entertainment industry. According to court documents obtained by People, Gabriel's responded to the lawsuit filed by Callen in September, in which he claimed Gabriel has created an ongoing campaign to destroy his livelihood via threats, harassment, and intimidation of third parties that they contact him. Now, if I was you, again, I'm not too sure what relation this article writer Ali Malk has with Gabriel Tigerman, but if I was an LA comedian, especially within mostly the LA comedians, I'd be very worried, because it looks like this journalist actively went out and sought out the court documents pertaining to this issue in order to write this article. It wasn't like something they were presented or given a heads up on. They're actively trying to bring Bryan Callen down, and maybe as a consequence bring his friends down. So if you've got any skeletons in the closet and you're an LA stand-up comedian, you might want to get your affairs in order, because this person, Ali Malk, is coming for you. It continues here. Gabriel is the husband of Catherine Fior Tigerman, who accused Callen of raping her in 1999. Her story was reported by the Los Angeles Times earlier this year. In the documents, Gabriel says he wants to clarify that Ms. Tigerman did not accuse Callen of raping her. Rather, she told the reporter that Callen raped her. She explained the circumstances that rape in detail, and the reporter corroborated her account. Well, I don't understand that. Clarify. Ms. Tigerman did not accuse. Okay, she's basically claiming outright that no, he actually did rape me. I'm not accusing him. It actually happened. Jesus Christ, they're coming out hard, innit? But I understand it. It's his wife, innit? You know, you got to ride or die with your lady, innit? There's no other explanation. There's no other thing that needs to be said, really. I understand it. Even if she's lying, you have to ride with her. And again, who knows if she's lying? Imagine she's telling the truth. Imagine if she's legitimately telling the truth and this actually happened. And Callen's going around performing shows, filming flipping videos, doing podcasts and stuff. It's just really bad, innit? Again, but what do you do? How do you deal with it? If you've been accused of something that you generally think you didn't do, how can you go about defending yourself? And especially nowadays, what do you do? Do you do a Crystalia and just retreat from social life, from public life, sorry, and kind of, you know, just go back home and look after your kid and your wife, whatever it may be? Or do you do a Callen and announce a podcast, then take it back, then try and get on your own one, then step back again because your cast media on top of you? Oh, there's another story too. Supposedly, according to the homeless cats, Bryan Callen is suing cast media, allegedly. That's what's been reported, you know, in the scene, behind the scenes, you know, in the depths of Reddit. People are discussing that. I wonder if that's true. If that is true, that could be a very interesting development going forward. But anyway, we digress. Let's continue with the article. According to Callen's initial complaint, Gabriel allegedly reached out to a slew of comedy clubs that had booked Callen 53 through email and Twitter. Along with tagging multiple comedy clubs, Gabriel tweeted September, "By booking at Bryan Callen, you are sending a very clear message that you support sexual abusers and don't believe the victims, despite the highly vetted, thoroughly researched articles that LA Times noted." Now, don't get me wrong, it's a little bit, you know, it's a little bit Karen-ish what he's doing, but I completely understand it. It's his wife, right? And the accusation or what she's alleging happened is very serious. And you know, if I was, you know, he's a better man than I could be, right? If that was me and that was my wife, I'd be waiting outside a Bryan Callen show so I could hit him over the head with a steel pipe. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't give a shit. I'd happily do the bid for that. But you know, I understand his approach, but this makes a lot more sense than somebody like a Seth Simons, right? That guy that's always going out trying to get comedians cancelled and stuff, right? He just seems like a guy that's, you know, immensely unhappy with whatever life that he's living at the moment. And he spends his entire time covering comedians and trying to pick apart every misstep that they do in order to somehow bring their career to a stumbling or grinding halt. And so far, it hasn't really worked, has it? There's no one he's actually cancelled successfully. Of course, you know, his most famous one might have been the St. Gilles stuff that happened with his kind of questionable racial slur that he kind of dropped during a podcast that didn't really, you know, resonate that well with people, and he kind of got taken off of SNL. But for the most part, it hasn't really cancelled somebody. Because when I think of cancelling, I think of somebody's career coming to a grinding halt. No more shows for you. You're done. You're out of here. It's over. Like a Harvey Weinstein, he's cancelled, right? Even if he comes out of prison, I don't see what he could legitimately do in the entertainment industry. You know, it's going to be closed doors wherever he goes. I don't know, man. Again, that being said, LA Hollywood people are weird, man. I'm sure they'd want to work with him behind the scenes and not just be pictured around with him. I don't know. But anyway, this makes more sense than Seth Simons, completely honest. It continues here. Oh, there's more tweets from him. Jeez, he went hard. He kept them up too. He hasn't deleted the tweets. Big up him. So he continues. In his response, Gabriel denied most of the claims made by Callen, though he did admit to communicating with various comedy clubs and expressing his opinion that the comedy clubs which provide the plaintiff with a platform to perform his comedy would, by doing so, send a message that they support a sexual abuser. So that's the thing. So why does Callen think this is a good idea to sue him? Because what are you suing him for? Because that's his opinion, right? I don't think there's anything libel in here. There's nothing slanderous. It's his assumption based on the events that's happening in public, especially because it concerns his own wife, that he thinks that it's not a good idea for his comedy clubs to book him. That's just an opinion of one dude. That's why I said at the beginning when I heard Callen was counter-suing or suing this guy for defamation, whatever it may be, that it was such a bad move. And it just goes to show how insulated and detached from reality Bryan Callen is in this issue, because in my opinion he's trying to do all of these things in order to kind of save his career. And I've always said from the beginning, his career's over. Hollywood is very reactionary like that, right? When you get accused of something, it's very rare, unless the internal investigation took place and it can completely exonerate you. It's pretty much impossible for you to be welcomed with open arms into the Hollywood industry, especially if you're somebody that wasn't well liked prior, right? Because a lot of the cancellations happen to people, some of the cancellations I would say happen to individuals who weren't that well liked in the industry. So the cancellations are seen as like a good excuse to kind of get them out of the way. But even if you are that well liked, right? No one wants the hassle. No one wants the disruption. No one wants their, the money they've invested being affected by a question being raised around an allegation that you didn't respond to in 2000, whatever it may be. It's just not worth it. So most production companies, most studios will just be like, you know what, arm's distance approach. You can work with us maybe behind the scenes writing or helping out in consultancy, but in terms of getting in front of the camera, never happening. So in my opinion, instead of going around trying to sue people and putting on shows behind closed doors, he should be trying his best to clear his name in any way, shape he can do, so that he can return back onto the Fire and the Kid, because that show is suffering because of his, because of him not being there. And that's the best place where he can actually show his skills. I think at the moment doing that conspiracy show with Sam Tripoli, although it's great, and although Sam Tripoli is a fucking legend because he's the only guy in the industry or in that little comedy scene that actually backed Callen and came out and actually supported him in public and went, out of the way to actually step in front of the camera and sit beside him, knowing what that could do to his own career. He's absolutely, he should be, always looked at as a legend regardless of what he does, going forward. He's always going to be in my good books in that regard, an absolute solid dude, legend. I still think Bryan's best platform is The Fire and the Kid. Like it or lump it, even if you're not a fan of Brendan Shaw, they work great together, right? They're a great duo, a great tandem. And not having them around in the podcasting climate at the moment is just a bit of a shame, especially once COVID gets out of the way. Because I think, of course, a lot of the issues that I had the podcast came around the times when COVID was around and all the comedy clubs were closing. They just really rubbed up the wrong way, both Bryan Callen and Brendan. They just, were dealing or saying some very ignorant things concerning the virus and being very dismissive of it, mostly because it affected their livelihood. Understandable, but, annoying. Once COVID gets out of the way and we have a vaccine, that show would be a great platform for Bryan Callen to reach to showcase his comedic skills. So all of this is really unnecessary, and he's really brought it upon himself. Of course, if the allegations are true, he definitely brought it upon himself. And even if they're not true, the fact that he would go out and sue the husband of a rape accuser, optics wise, just looks really, really bad, especially in the social justice world. It continues here. A rep for Callen did not immediately respond to people's requests for comment, and Gabriel's attorney declined to comment. Callen's complaint alleges that Gabriel has engaged in a relentless campaign to economic interference against Mr. Callen as a revenge for something Mr. Callen did not do. Mr. Tickerman's apparent objective is to have Mr. Callen blacklisted, destituted, and never work again. But that's already happening, my guy. I'm not sure why he's doing this. And again, it's just unnecessary expenses. Don't he just enough to worry about in terms of looking after his family that he has to kind of file these court documents? But again, maybe he's looked after and he doesn't really care. But hey, in the document showing his response, Gabriel denies those allegations, except insofar as to admit his belief that sexual abusers like a plaintiff should not be welcome to work in the entertainment industry, both because of their danger they pose and the public message such a welcome would send. Okay, I get it. In addition to his response, Gabriel requested that the judge dismiss him from this action with prejudice and that Callen award him with the attorney's fees. He also requested a jury trial. Mate, Gabriel Tickerman is not playing around. He's willing to go to the absolute nth of it. Imagine if flipping Callen takes a stand against, this is so bad. Where's his friends? Where's Callen's friends to tell him that he should just retract this case and just try and fight against the allegation and try and, prove himself innocent? What is he doing? In July, Callen was accused of sexual assault or misconduct by Catherine and 3 other women, right? 3 other women. Rachel Green, Tiffany King, and Claire against her. All detailed allegation in LA Times. As Callen denied them, let me be very clear, as you said. But this person has a real boner for Bryan Callen and people in the comedy scene. So again, if you've got some skeletons in the closet, be very cautious. But I'm interested to know your thoughts, man. People out there, what do you guys think? Has Bryan made a rod for his own back? Did he fuck up his own situation, or is he within his rights to be fighting his corner as vehemently as he's fighting it at the moment in order to kind of clear his name in a roundabout way? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'd love to know your thoughts. And then I think that might be it. Yeah, that might be it. Let me end it there just for the time being. So that was the Agostinho Zinga Show, episode number 399. Thanks so much for tuning in as per usual. It's been a pleasure to have your company. If it's your first time tuning in, make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe, and leave me a comment down below via YouTube. And if you're listening via the podcast app, please leave me a 5-star review and share the show with your friends. Until next time, my friends, take care, be safe, and I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Peace.